An update full of good news. However, Queensland is still expecting a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone to impact their coastline in a couple of days. So as I did headline this update, this is an update with some good news. We are expecting a weaker tropical cyclone in the form of Cyclone Kirrily to pass between the coastline of Ayr and Bowen in around 2 to 3 days' time. However, we're still expecting that Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone landfall in line with what the Bureau of Meteorology is expecting. All of that plus more coming up in this January 23rd forecast update from Force 13 AU. So stick around to the end to get your detailed forecast update on a checklist on how to prepare for this tropical cyclone. Now, if you do end up enjoying the video, please do consider subscribing, but let's take a look at the national picture right now. Hot conditions still exist over the nation's centre and across to the west, where the all-time January heat record is actually going to be threatened today, with a daytime maximum of 50 degrees Celsius expected in some parts of Western Australia. We've also got storms up in the north, still associated with tropical low 03U, which is moving through Western Australia this time and really starting to peter off. There's barely some rain activity associated with it. Rain as well for northern Queensland around Cairns down towards Mackay as well, and hot conditions associated with that very humid weather that we're seeing across Brisbane down towards Grafton as well, and showers persisting across Tasmania. But what's new down there? They're always wet all year round. Now we're looking at this tropical cyclone forecast graphic. Angrex still kicking over in the west. It's a Category 2 strength system right now, and I've dropped the chances on the low just by 5%. There is actually a minuscule chance that it doesn't develop now. We were saying it was certainly going to develop yesterday, but the Bureau of Meteorology has backed off their chances to 80%. So they're not overly confident that it's going to develop at all, but we'll wait and see on what happens. I'm still expecting it to become a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone at some point in its life, probably just before it makes landfall. But you can see on the forecast track graphic right now, I've backed down at the forecast peak intensity quite significantly. I was expecting a Category 4 initially, now just a Category 2, but it will be a Category 3 at some point between days 2 and 3 just before landfall. Might weaken slightly just before landfall, but still likely to become a Category 3 strength cyclone as it makes landfall. We've got that cyclone watch from south of Cairns to St Lawrence, including Townsville, Mackay and the Whitsunday Islands, and inland to Charters Towers and Ravenswood. Now we're looking at the Access G3 wind speeds right now. You can see the cyclone still blows up into a significant system, Category 3 proportions at least. In fact, it looks like it tickles Category 4 status very briefly as it moves into air, but we're waiting for the forecast models to update, which will probably happen in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. So you get the latest information on that later on in the video. Before it moves down towards Bundaberg and down towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast, where a significant amount of rainfall is expected. As we switch over to the rainfall forecast now, you can see a lot of moisture blowing ashore here, and that's going to deliver some very high rainfall accumulations across next Wednesday and down towards next Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Now zooming out to the national picture in terms of rainfall throughout the rest of today, a little bit of rainfall expected across parts of Western Australia, but the bulk of it is going to be across the tropical north, and then it's going to be Queensland's turn for that significant amount of rainfall next Thursday and into Friday as this tropical cyclone makes landfall in a location between Townsville and Bowen, most likely on top of Ayr or just towards the southeast of Ayr, before it moves down parallel to the Queensland coastline and delivers quite a significant amount of rainfall there. You can see some locations are probably going to be expecting up to 1,000 millimetres of rainfall in one or two places just outside of Mackay, and then down towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast as well. A substantial amount of rainfall is expected down there too. Now let's take a look at temperature. You can see those very hot conditions expected across parts of today, where we will be seeing that all-time heat record for January threatened up to 50 degrees Celsius. But once again, I mean, it's Western Australia in the middle of summer, so what do you expect there? 50 degrees is just another day at the office, as the models completely poo all over the screen right now. But you can see very warm conditions expected across parts of central South Australia and into Queensland as well. Very high heat indexes expected throughout parts of Queensland associated with the passage of the tropical cyclone. So make sure you're drinking plenty of water because you'll be sweating heaps, that's for sure, as this tropical cyclone moves through. Very significant amounts of heat expected across parts of southeastern Queensland and also parts of western Queensland as well. It's going to be very hot through there over the next 10 days. We will be seeing daytime maxima approach 48 degrees Celsius in one or two locations around Birdsville. Now, for a look at the satellite imagery, it's looking a lot better than it was yesterday. We've got a defined centre of circulation, but absolutely no significant convection to speak of around the centre of circulation, which is kind of disappointing for our forecast, considering we were expecting this to be a fully fledged tropical cyclone. But I guess no one's got this system right now, and we're really backing down the forecast and backtracking quite a lot, which is interesting considering we were expecting this to be a very simple forecast and a straightforward forecast by yesterday, but it's really not at this point. But anyway, we're going to jump over to the forecast models and see what's in store from this tropical cyclone over the next 15 minutes. Alright, so we're going to take a look at the wind forecast first, and then we're going to take a look at rainfall and storm surge as a threat from this tropical cyclone. So stick around to the end to get your detailed weather outlook on this tropical low that is developing in the Coral Sea and is likely to become a tropical cyclone Kirrily. Now, winds right now around Lihu Reef 30 knots from the south. Now, this means that this tropical low is definitely starting to become a full-blown tropical cyclone. Its winds are approaching tropical cyclone thresholds of around 35 knots. Very, very strong winds now starting to develop in this system, and they're only going to get stronger from here on out. Now, as we play this forecast run through, you can see it wraps itself up quite nicely throughout the rest of today. Actually does become that fully fledged tropical cyclone that we've been expecting. It only becomes it on Wednesday morning, so it's only about 48 hours late, which is some good news for the Queensland coastline because it means it spares them from a system that's got an extra 48 hours to rapidly intensify in some of the best conditions that the world has to offer for tropical cyclones in the Pacific Ocean in January. So very, very favourable environment for this tropical cyclone, but thankfully it is definitely not making the most of it, and it doesn't look like it's going to either, because it is going to remain relatively weaker than what we have been saying. Still, expecting a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone to cross the coast around Ayr. So areas between Townsville and Bowen and inland to Charters Towers really need to be preparing for severe tropical cyclone conditions, and it would be wise to as far south as Proserpine, including Hamilton Island as well. There is a chance that you guys receive 100-knot wind gusts. However, the forecast maximum sustained winds have been back down pretty significantly from yesterday when we were expecting wind gusts approaching, I believe, 115 knots. What's that? 210 kilometers an hour. We're now probably only going to see maximum wind gusts approaching 160 kilometers an hour, and I use the term only very loosely because that is still a very destructive wind gust expected to come ashore. Still a powerful system though. You can see as it moves closer to the Queensland coastline on Thursday morning, about 12 hours away from landfall at this point. It's looking fairly beefy, that's for sure. A Category 2 strength system at this time north of Hamilton Island, and intensifying as well. I'd imagine Hamilton Island would be under some pretty significant winds right now. Maybe 30 knots might be a little bit too low, but expecting wind gusts approaching 60 knots there. Definitely be some very rough seas as well coming into Proserpine, that little cove there on the Sundays, and down towards Mackay as well. They'll be receiving some very heavy rainfall from Thursday, which I will get to a little bit later on in the video. And then across to Egg, those gusty conditions will start by around Thursday mid-afternoon or mid-morning maybe. But yeah, it's a strong system. Look at this, Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone wind gusts. It is a relatively strong system and is one to be taken very seriously as it approaches the coastline. And then it makes landfall, what's that? Basically on top of Ayr. I believe that's just outside of Home Hill, that little, I guess a suburb outside of Ayr, a little town site just a couple of k's outside of Ayr. But peak wind gusts on the northern side approaching 80 knots. That's at least 150 kilometers an hour. Those are destructive wind gusts, and they will cause some pretty significant property damage from things that aren't battened down properly. So if you've got deck chairs, lawn chairs, trampolines, pieces of plastic or tables in the backyard that are prone to flying around or becoming airborne in strong thunderstorm winds, then expect them to become airborne in a situation like this. Make sure you're taking them inside or strapping them down, taking whatever measures you can to make sure that they don't fly around, because it's when those debris get airborne that they can take lives, they can smash into cars, they can smash into windows, and they can become very dangerous missiles, that's for sure. Also, loose branches on your property, make sure you're trimming them up until about Wednesday morning. That's when conditions will start to become too dangerous to trim up branches and so forth. If you've got a boat in any of the harbours around Townsville, down towards Ayr, Bowen, or even onto Hamilton Island, it's probably too late now to move it. The seas are definitely going to be getting rougher towards this evening, so you're just going to have to leave that and hope for the best. first. But if you do have adequate insurance, then it should be covered in a situation like this. I'd be horrified if insurance was void on a tropical cyclone like this. But yeah, there are watches in effect. I believe there should be cyclone warnings now in effect for Hamilton Island, considering they're expecting gales in the next 24 hours. But yeah, the watch zone is ridiculous from the Bureau of Meteorology. It's from Cairns down towards St. Lawrence. I really struggle to believe anywhere north of Ingham will receive tropical cyclone conditions at this point. And I believe it might even need to be raised further south than St. Lawrence. If St. Lawrence, I believe, is just outside of Mackay, but again, correct me if I'm wrong. Oh no, it's down here. Okay, no, that's a fair enough warning zone, but I'd also hope that these little bays or peninsulas here down towards what's the community down here, Samuel Hill or Yappen, even down towards Rockhampton, they should be under some kind of watch because the gusts are going to be strong down towards there. But yeah, I'm a little bit confused at the Bureau of Meteorology's warning. They've been expecting this storm to swing north by the looks of things, but that's looking very, very unlikely at this time. But again, they are the official agency and they do know what's up. But that landfall on air at around 10 p.m. local time as this cyclone moves through, pretty powerful by the looks of things, Category 3 strength, and it moves inland right over the top of Ravenswood by early Friday morning on Australia Day, still delivering severe tropical cyclone wind gusts to the coastline between Townsville down towards Bowen, including air still absolutely copping it. They're getting thrashed at this point, still wind gusts approaching that 145, 150 kilometre an hour threshold. Charters Towers as well, probably under some severe tropical cyclone winds at this point, so it remains a strong tropical cyclone as it moves through inland until about Friday early morning around 8 a.m. when it really does start to weaken off and the rain threat really does pick up on this system. We're expecting a very wet storm out of this, that's for sure. Now, the icon model has been very weird with this tropical cyclone so far, but it's still actually a plausible scenario considering what we've actually got going on with the storm right now, in the sense that it's struggling to intensify and it's moved a lot further east. They bring it ashore early on Friday morning on Australia Day, but it's substantially stronger at this point with wind gusts approaching 180 kilometers an hour. So this is something that has really got me scratching my head, as you can probably tell as I'm recording this audio and video. It's a very interesting scenario. I don't really know what to make of it. It's possible, but I do believe landfall is going to happen around Thursday mid-afternoon into Thursday evening, or maybe even into Thursday night. I think my software has just completely toasted itself there. So that's weird, but again, it's possible at this point. The icon model has been a pretty funny model with this storm, but it is getting things right as of about now. I think the UCMWF and the GFS have been really wrong consistently with this system. The GFS has been at some points calling for a Category 5 strength landfall, and at this time, I believe they're calling for a Category 1 strength landfall. So the GFS has been a very strange model to forecast with, and it's one that I have been really reluctant to use. However, I will just show it briefly right now. You can see making landfall. I mean, that's barely a tropical cyclone, actually. It makes landfall as a tropical low between Ayr and Bowen. So the landfall site is set in stone by the looks of things. All the major forecast models have it making landfall between Ayr and Bowen, most of them on top of Ayr or just outside of Ayr, so that's where I'm inclined to call the landfall site. The Bureau of Meteorology is still a little bit further north between Ayr and Townsville on Cape Bowling Green. But that's very weird that the GFS has gone from calling a Category 5 strength landfall right down to calling a tropical low landfall. And yeah, there is still that chance that this cyclone completely busts and refuses to form full stop, which is actually becoming an increasing probability now, considering it's just refusing to intensify at all. But I wouldn't be putting much weight onto this. I don't see a world how this doesn't get to tropical cyclone status. But hey, if it doesn't, we will take it, that's for sure. Just make sure you've got plenty of ice cold beers if you live between Townsville and Proserpine to get yourselves through the possibility of being completely cut off from civilization for a couple of days, because the rainfall threat is going to be huge, and we will take a look at that right now because we are expecting a hell of a lot of rainfall over the next 5 days from this system. As I've been saying consistently around the landfall site, just a torrential downpour of rainfall over about 4 to 6 hours, where you'll be seeing up to 300 or 400 millimeters of rainfall. That will cause some some flash flooding in and outside of Townsville down towards Ayr and also down towards Bowen as well. The access model has been pretty strange on rainfall. I mean, look at this around the landfall site, 50 or 80 millimetres of rain. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a lot higher than that, and it will be a lot smoother in terms of the rainfall swathe from this system. But inland communities could also be picking up a really big amount of rainfall when this cyclone starts to turn. I think 800 or 900 is a bit bullish from the XSG3, but certainly areas will be picking up to 400 or 500 millimetres, which for some locations, especially out towards Huandon and Torrens Creek, that's half a year's worth of rainfall. Charters Towers could also be seeing a couple of months worth of rainfall from 400 to 500 millimetres. Ravenswood 400 to 500 millimetres as well. And these are rivers through here as well. These rivers will likely be flooding up towards their moderate or major flooding alerts. So if you do live in an area that's prone to flooding, and I like to say if you were flooded during Cyclone Debbie, then prepare for some pretty significant flooding here, because it's going to be a situation like that. I can't remember what this dam is called, but south of Ravenswood, that dam or big lake flows into this river through here, and as this fills up, which it's very likely to completely fill up to capacity, we're going to see a surge of water rush down this river through here down towards Home Hill and Ayr. And considering this is a big flat river delta through here, I wonder what crop they grow around Ayr. Actually, that got me wondering yesterday. We're likely to see some very significant flooding through Home Hill and Ayr from this tropical cyclone, and also in the mangroves around Ayr as well, those swamps on the coastline of Ayr. We could also be seeing some pretty significant coastal inundation with a big storm surge coinciding with the highest tide from a full moon. Now, we're also looking at some very substantial rainfall totals from the inflow bands of this tropical cyclone on the hills adjacent to Mackay up towards Proserpine. We could be seeing one location just south of Yalborough picking up over 1,200 millimetres of rainfall. That's a huge amount of rainfall to be picking up from just one tropical cyclone, and that will definitely be causing some major flooding in these rivers through here in these river catchments. Proserpine itself, probably about 500 to 600 millimetres. Mackay, where is Mackay? I've got to find it now. Down here, maybe about 300 millimetres of rainfall from the rainfall and the inflow bands of this system. Halliday Bay, 500 millimetres up towards Rise and Shine. That's an actual town, 1,200 millimetres, and then Mount Charlton as well, be seeing up to a metre of rainfall as well. Now, I am more confident in calling the amount of rainfall from this sort of inflow banding feature on the hills adjacent to Mackay than I am actually calling rainfall around the centre of the storm's landfall. This is very, very likely at this point to happen, and exactly how the Access G3 model has it occurring, where we see these torrential rainfall bands from the tropical cyclone, as I choke on my words, over the next couple of days, picking up over a metre of rainfall. That's very, very likely to happen. I've got high confidence in saying that will actually happen. However, rainfall around Ayr and Townsville is a little bit more unpredictable, and we're going to have to wait till, I guess, 12 hours before landfall to really call it. But just expect torrential 6-hourly totals between Ingham down towards Bowen as well. And then you're going to be seeing these big sort of 48 to 72-hour totals south of Bowen on these adjacent hills to the coastline, where you'll be seeing some very significant rainfall occur as well. Now, I know a lot of you from southeastern Queensland are also concerned about the rainfall threat down here. Well, there is certainly a rainfall threat. Let me tell you, a lot of rainfall is expected around Maroochydore down towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast as well, where you'll be seeing places picking up to 500 millimetres, especially inland around the Scenic Rim and down towards Byron Bay and Tweed Heads as well. A lot of rainfall is expected down there, but again, this is very uncertain because of it's about a week away still. We're going to be seeing this occur maybe next Sunday and into Monday, where we see this rainfall really start to pick up from this tropical low's passage. But yeah, it's really going to be a Monday and into Tuesday threat by the looks of things, and a lot will change up until then. It's not going to be until about next weekend that I can give a really accurate forecast here. But I mean, considering the flood measures that the Brisbane Metro have in place against rainfall up to about 500 millimetres, I'm not overly concerned about catastrophic flooding in the Brisbane area. Definitely nothing on the 1974 Brisbane city floods, but in inland communities around Ipswich up towards Toowoomba, well, I say communities, they're basically cities at this point, we could still be seeing some pretty significant flooding in one or two areas. And considering it's going to be very heavy rainfall as well, there's that chance of seeing that flash flooding, that river flooding, and also metre flooding as well, considering the Brisbane city is just basically one big slab of concrete. The water's got nowhere to go or soak into apart from the Brisbane River, so there'll be a lot of rainfall falling in there, but it's probably a clean-up that the Brisbane city needs at this point. But yeah, it's going to be a significant amount of rainfall falling there, and I really hope the Bureau of Meteorology give us some warning on that, because they were pretty slack on the Boxing Day storms that came through. But in their defence, thunderstorms are very, very challenging to forecast. But the conditions that we had set up for Boxing Day were pretty good for thunderstorms, so you'd have to be pretty silly not to forecast some significant thunderstorms, which the Bureau of Meteorology initially did forecast. Now, there is a little chance, a very slight chance, of another tropical low forming up around the Solomon Islands in around 10 days' time. It's going to be a weak system. It does spin itself up very, very briefly on around next Wednesday and Thursday before moving into the Coral Sea and dying off there. I call that is very unlikely at this point. But again, another system for this time of the year is possible. Normally at this time of the year, you see those trains of cyclones move through the South Pacific into Vanuatu, New Caledonia, and off towards Fiji. And some of them even swing over towards Australia as well, like we are going to see with Cyclone Kirrily. But again, I wouldn't be putting too much weight on that occurring at this time. But yeah, that's basically all that I have time for in this forecast update on what will become Cyclone Kirrily. If you have enjoyed this forecast update, then please do consider subscribing. And if you really want to show further support, leave a like on the video and tell me how I can improve in the comment section down below. But thank you so much for your support recently. I'm honoured to be your weatherman, and I will catch you all in the next storm.
Thank you for watching our content this update. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to get more updates covering all things weather and geophysics impacting Australia and the Oceania region. Subscribe to our other channels for more content from across the network, and be sure to check out our website where you can find free access to floater and radar imagery and articles on everything weather and much more. If you wish to support us directly, you can purchase some of our merchandise. We have a wide variety of clothing and homeware, or you could become an Ultimate Fan, which is the best way to directly support us, granting you some sweet perks and offers, including features in our custom storm animations, live streams, and much more.